Welcome to Caribbean Mystics Podcast,
where we marry mysticism, superstition, and lore. I'm your host, Paulina.
And I'm your host, Gabrielle, and we are your resident Caribbean mystics.
Join us today as we explore the depths of real supernatural stories
told by real people located right in our very own backyard.
On this episode of Caribbean Mystics, we feature two eerie tales. First, a Dominican woman's bus ride takes an unexpected turn when she spots something indescribable, possibly the legendary Baca. Then we travel to Cuba, where a Puerto Rican student's stay at an agricultural school is disrupted by a ghostly figure. Two islands, two brushes with the unknown.
My name is Ledis. The experience I'm about to tell you about happened to me in 2001. This was in Dominican Republic, specifically in the east, in Bávaro. This is the area where the resorts are. I used to work at a jewelry store that had stores in different hotels. We had two shifts, the morning shift from 9 to 4, and the late shift from 3 to 11. That day I was in the late shift, 3 to 11. The boss will come pick us up all over the different stores in between 10 and 11 at night. After I was picked up from my store, we pick up other people in other stores, and then we started going back to the city. From Bávaro to Higüey is about 45 minutes. The driver used to take a shortcut. This shortcut would take us through a rural road, a dirt road, that had in one side sugarcane fields, and in the other side were just bush. We go back there in that road. The road has some street lights, the yellow ones. We go in, and I was sitting in the driver's side of the bus with my head against the glass. So I'm looking outside, and this is a long road, straight. When we're in the road, I see to the left, like someone is trying to come out of the cane field. So when I saw that shadow there, let's say, I thought like, oh, this person is waiting for our bus to pass so he can go to the other side. I could see it was a man. A short man, but not a midget, and with dark skin, and with very short hair, and he didn't have a shirt on, so I could see that he had like a belly, and his arms were to the side. And I could see that this person had like short pants, like when you cut a pants to make them short. But when we drove in front of him, when I saw the whole person, I could see that the upper side, the upper part of the body was, let's say, normal, but from the legs down were goat legs, hairy goat legs. And I just look at it and I keep looking back to make sure, like, is this what I saw? My rational mind was trying to tell me, but this person could not have goat legs. This is not normal. I just like got up a little and I look around, and there was a guy, a coworker that was sitting in the same side of the bus, broad row behind me. And he was looking up. I just kept thinking about it. A couple of days later, when I was going back to work in the same shift, we didn't have a place to have dinner at the stores. We had to stop at some place to buy our dinner for the night. And I was sitting alone on a table, and I heard the coworker that was sitting behind me that night on the bus. I saw him talking to others, and he was telling them that he had asked the driver, that we called him Mustache because he had a thick mustache, not to take that shortcut at night anymore. And there was another a co-worker there with him named Victor, and they were agreeing to it and trying to convince others that was the best idea, not to take the shortcut. He was saying, no, it's too lonely. If something happens to the bus there, I won't be able to find help fast enough. And the other workers were telling him, well, but if we don't take the shortcut, it's going to take us longer to reach the city, because taking the shortcut was about 45 minutes. But if we went through the main road, it'll take an hour or over an hour. After the group dispersed, I kept looking at him and the other one, so I went there. And I told him, I just heard that you guys are trying to convince the group that we shouldn't take the shortcut at night. So I just asked them, what do you see? And he replied back to me. He said, why? What do you see? And I said, well, when we were coming the other night, I saw a man that was trying to come out of the cane field. He just was like standing there, or I thought he was trying to come out of there. And this person had goat legs. And he said, yes, I saw it too. And this other coworker too that was sitting at the table with him, his name is Victor, he said, yes, I saw him too. He asked me, and why you didn't say anything? And I said, well, when it happened, I looked around and it seemed like everybody was doing their own stuff in the bus. So I asked him, what do you think that it was? And he told me, well, definitely that was not a man because he had goat legs. And he said, this was Abaca. Abaca, it's a figure that we have in Dominican Republic that some people believe exists, that is a person that could be like a shapeshifter. I would become an animal to protect land and livestock. So this other co-worker, Victor, he said, this is not a Baca. Victor is Haitian, so they have other beliefs, but even he said that this is not a Baca. He didn't specify what he thought it was. After much convincing of the rest of co-workers, we stopped taking that shortcut at night. Let's just say I just can't explain it. As today, I don't know what it was, but it was standing there.
I was in my mother's house getting ready for my trip to Cuba. I was about to leave in a few hours, and I was really anxious and anticipating the trip to Cuba because I'd experienced the spirit of my grandfather and a lot of other things I'd gone through. I started self-medicating at 15. So my Cuba trip was the first time that I would be completely sober. I was really scared because I hadn't dealt with perception for so long when it came to clairvoyancy. And I knew that in Cuba, it would be hard to access things like weed or even alcohol, especially as a student with a tight schedule. I was supposed to do an investigation as well, so I knew that I would be at my most sober. It was a 2-hour flight, and I was just really excited because the first thing that we were going to do was go to the ANAP. The ANAP, it was this beautiful 2-floor post-colonial house. It was called the National House of Agriculture. It was basically an independent organization that received students internationally and gave them a space to stay and sleep in while also providing for them some of the cleanest food in Cuba straight from their lands. And I remember that the first time I got there, stepped off the bus, I was so exhausted, but the house was crazy beautiful. It was very antique, it felt very old. It'd been there for hundreds of years. I did notice there was this other house next to it, to the left of it, that was the opposite of the house. It was in disarray. It was very unkept and even a little bit blackened, probably mold going into the wood. And I just thought it was such a funny contrast. I also felt off about it as well because it had possibly items having to do with Santeria. There was a horseshoe nailed to it, which I thought was peculiar for a horseshoe to be like nailed on purpose next to that door. There was also this very antique doll. It was made out of ceramic, I believe, and it was sort of like in display next to a plant. I thought it was odd, and I already had like a specific vibe from the house. I go into the house, and it was this beautiful 2-floor house. It had this wide white staircase to the left and this corridor across from you that went into a courtyard outside and then went into another room that was the dining room. It felt very homey, inviting, and it had a lot of lighting as well, which is something that I noticed. It had a lot of wide open windows with no curtains. So that did ease my anxiety a little bit because I thought, it's such an open space. There's nothing that can hide here. My professor told me that the girls would be going into the room upstairs to the left. And it was this narrow corridor with these wide open windows where the light was filtering in, and you could even see the moon outside. It just made me feel very, very safe. That first night, all the girls were getting ready to bed. I was sleeping with 3 girls in the room. I'm getting ready to go to sleep. I'm really tired from the day, and so are all the girls. At 2 a.m., I feel almost like I'm being jostled awake by something. I noticed that the walls, these cement walls that were huge in the room, were shaking. I'm sitting there upright, shocked. I quickly look to the girls because I think if it's an earthquake, the girls will probably notice. They'll wake up anytime soon. But none of the girls had woken up. They were peacefully asleep next to me and across from me. I reach out for one of them, which was the closest one to me, shake her a little bit. And I tell her, hey, are you awake? I tried with like the other girls that were farther away, but none of them were waking up. So I grab my sheet and I try and go lay back down. There's this strange noise right across from me, and I am just dreading it. I had this little rectangular mirror across from me, and it was hanging on one nail. It felt like someone was taking a teacup and was trying to bang it against the mirror. I tried to reach out to one of the girls. None of them woke up. I tried to pull the covers back over me, and I tried to just go back to sleep. That's when, at the bottom right of the bed, it feels like someone sits down on it. I felt my feet literally fall a little off to the right. That's when I stood up from the bed, ran out the room, and I went out the corridor. And remember, this corridor was supposed to be the super light corridor with the moon, outside. But I noticed that it was very dark, which made no sense. I go down the stairs, and to my left at the bottom of the stairs was the security guard. There was the TV static. It was really dark. And he stands up and he's just like, "Do you need anything? What's going on?" And I'm like, "No, everything is fine. I just can't sleep and I'm just gonna hang out here for an hour." So I'm sitting there with him for an hour. And as the hour is approaching, I'm holding myself back from asking him if he's seen anything, if he's heard anything, because I'm curious. I try to hold it off, but curiosity gets the best of me, and I do ask him in a subtle way. I'm like, "Hey, I was just wondering, has anything ever happened to you here?" And he's like, "Well, sometimes we get these weird lights going on and off and stuff, but nothing unusual." And I'm like, "Okay, but does something ever happen?" He thinks for a moment and then he goes, "Well, there was this one student who died, but I'm not sure what happened to her or where." At this point, I regret asking immediately. I knew I had to go to bed eventually because I had classes really early in the morning at this new institution. I go up the stairs and I'm dreading every single step I take. I reach the top landing in the middle of the corridor. I froze. There's no way to ignore the fact that the corridor is completely black, shadowy. You can't see anything but maybe the very, very pale color of the peach door of my room. There are so many windows, and it's so dark in this corridor upstairs. I just cannot make sense of the fact that that light is being blocked off. I just knew that there was something there. I had the sense that I just had to stand there staring until whatever it was left, because in my mind, I just kept screaming, "I'm not going in that room until you leave. I'm not going in until you leave." Not even a minute went by. The door to the room creaks open. This white, translucent human shape just comes out, floating out of the room. I couldn't believe what I was staring at. I can't make any sense of if it's a her, if it's a him, but I do get a subtle sense that it is a female energy. We were both caught up in this almost stare down, where in my mind, I'm asking her if she could please leave my room so that I could go back in it. I ran back into my room, threw the cover on top of me. I really didn't want to think about what I had just seen. The girls were just sleeping next to me as if nothing had happened. I forced myself to go back to sleep. The next day, the first thing I do is go into the director's office and ask him about what the cop downstairs had told me. He goes, I hope you're not uncomfortable or upset with the situation. You know, we can change you to another room if you wish, but there's no way of me really avoiding this. But about 5 years back, there was this girl from another exchange trip. It was an exchange trip from Argentina to Cuba. And she had stayed in that very same room. And she had slept in that very same bed. And I asked him, like, what happened? And he tells me that apparently the girls had woken up in the room and she was just lying there, dead, as if she died in her sleep. There were no signs of any struggle. There was no blood. There was nothing. She had died in that room where I'd stayed in. He didn't even deny it. He tells me, you should go talk to this lady because she'll probably know what to do if you want to ward anything off for the rest of your nights. I go downstairs and she was in the courtyard watering the plants. I talked to her about my experience. She smiles, she even laughs, and she goes, oh, so you met her. I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, you know, a lot of things happen. I try to, as soon as it's 6 p.m., I try to leave. I do not like to stay here at night because she's always around. The lights are always flickering off. You could see her walking around. You could see the door shutting off. Things like that. She asked me, did she do anything bad to you? I'm like, no. I don't think it's a bad feeling I got from her, but I'm just so scared and I just don't think I could sleep. And I have a whole month left and I don't want to be mean, but I really need something to ward her off. And the director had told me to talk to you. She tells me, you're going to take shoes and you're going to put them backwards at the bottom of the bed. Almost as if the person stepped into those shoes because they were backwards at the bottom of the bed. It couldn't really interact with you. Almost as like a boundary, which made a lot of sense to me. Then she tells me to take a cup full of water, to put a piece of cardboard underneath it, turn it over, and then slide it off on my night table. And I think the last thing she told me was salt. If you really feel scared, then put a lot of salt near the door. So I did all those things that very morning before I left. I think she even gave me a little bit of incense as well to cleanse the space. She was so helpful and I literally never stopped doing it. I remember that even the girls in the room thought it was, they thought it was very odd, but they were super kind to me.
Hello, and welcome to another fabulous episode of Caribbean Mystics podcast. This is Paulina.
And this is Gabrielle Carrard. Don't forget to say your last name. You come
right.
up with a rule.
Paulina Creaky. Well, now that I'm thinking about it, like, maybe we should just redo our intro and just sneak them in there. Okay. I don't know. I feel silly saying it all the time? Whatever. Let's do what we feel, I guess.
Okay. Let's do what feels natural.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. So we are here. Barely made it. We were supposed to record this yesterday, but I was hungover, honestly.
Well, we can't put all the blame on Paulina because I also canceled as well because I wasn't feeling well, and to be honest, I'm still not feeling very well. But we're here, and I'm happy that we could make it because we made a commitment to you guys every Thursday.
Yes. I don't care if I'm hungover. I was like, okay, well, we'll do it. And then she was like, I'm feeling sick. I'm like, okay, good, because I really don't want to. Me and my significant other, me and Spencer, we don't get to go out much, and his mother's in town, so she watched the babies, and we went to a concert. So strange, but I saw a country music artist. I know what I like, yo, listening to country. Like, I don't really listen to country, but this one girl, I did like her music. And I'm not gonna discriminate. Whatever my soul is feeling, if I'm feeling that music, I'm gonna go listen to it. I don't care if it's dance hall or polka.
I love it. You know, Beyonce is kind of slowly, I know the country enthusiasts don't want to hear this, but Beyonce is slowly turning me on to the country vibe.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So I love that.
Oh yeah, I think it's turning mainstream. Like, what's his name? Post Malone starting to do country, and then
Yeah.
what's his name? Boozy. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
familiar. He sings
Yeah.
"Everybody in the club getting tipsy," like
I think it's like a little boozy.
Lil Boozy. Why do I
Yeah.
want to say Shabuzi? I'm too old.
We're really showing our age, man. Really showing our age.
We're not cool anymore.
No, we're not. We're not. We're in
Oh,
our golden
well,
years.
embracing it. It's all good.
Correct.
So, anyways, we've got two interesting stories this episode this week because, well, first of all, the first one was kind of short, and we wanted to kind of add an extra one for you guys. We just didn't want to leave it at that, and I just feel like that's almost half-assed in an episode. Like, we gotta give them a little bit more. And so we had this other story by Carla from PR. And we thought it'd be a good combination because we're starting to get into the Spanish speaking countries in the Caribbean area, the more Latin based countries in the Caribbean or islands.
Yeah, for sure. I was super excited to actually put these together because I think that it's illuminating our reach is growing further across the Caribbean, which I know has always been our dream. Um, but also, Carla gave us two stories. And so she gave us the story that you guys listened to, but there's another one that we wanted to save for Patreon. So we're going to have that up on Patreon um, by this weekend, actually, either Saturday or Sunday. It should pop off for you guys. Um, but her second story is really interesting, and she went into a lot of background regarding her family and her relationship with her grandfather. So if you haven't signed up for Patreon, this is another reason because you're going to have access to all of these exclusive stories. And I'm also excited that this is episode 5 because we're like knee deep in the season. For this season, you guys are going to get 10 full episodes, including a story for each of those. And then we're going to have an 11th episode. That's just going to be our season wrap up, which this is the longest season we've had so far. And I really like it.
Yeah. And just to piggyback on what you were saying about our reach as far as like other islands in the Caribbean, I got some stories from Trinidad and Tobago coming in soon. So keep your eyes
Love
peeled,
this.
your ears peeled. I'm so excited because we are slowly trickling into other islands, meeting more other people. I feel like we're actually building this creepy Caribbean community of people that are interested in this stuff. But it was always either taboo, you're weird, or just why would Caribbean people be into something I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's very cool to be meeting other people from all over the Caribbean that are very much into paranormal and the mystics. I think it would be really cool to maybe have a segment of the show or make a different show where we start interviewing actual Caribbean mystics as well, like voodoo priestesses or people in the mystical or magical realm that do practice santeria, brujeria, or obea, other Caribbean magical practices. Um, just because I'm running into those people and I personally, just of personal interest, want to know more from them. And it's interesting to me. But yeah.
I absolutely love it. And I think it's a brilliant idea. But Misty's, this is a great time. Let us know what you think about that. There's a new little feature, I guess, on the app that you're listening to. I think maybe Apple Podcast has it. I haven't checked if Spotify does, but you can send us a text message that comes to our email. And we've been getting a lot of like fan mail from you guys, which feels really great. But
That's
definitely let us
awesome.
know. Let us know if you'd like that. And then we could either figure out a way to incorporate it into Caribbean Mystics, or we can create a new endeavor that,
Yeah.
yeah, focuses on this, because I think it would be really well received, actually.
I want to hear from the Misties too. And yeah, if you don't have that feature of the send us a text, you can always email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. So there's always that option too.
For
So,
sure.
shall we begin?
Absolutely. I was super happy to get Latest's story. Not only is it our first story from the Dominican Republic, but I love talking about the like Caribbean legendary creatures, trying not to make it sound like the Pokemon, but like, like the La Japalesse and and the Cowfoot woman and the Goatfoot woman,
Hmm.
like there's so much lore and legend. And it's nice when we have a story that encompasses um, one of those entities connected to these legends and lores. And this particular story, she is talking about something that she believes to be the Baca. And this is per what I found, because I was really intrigued. It's a demonic shape shifting being that is conjured when a person makes a deal with the devil for wealth or any other desires in exchange for their souls. Various tales portray it as the devil himself. However, it can transform into any type of animal, usually a large dog or a bull. Regardless, this demon demands grand sacrifices for what it offers. Making a deal for prosperity can backfire on the person that's trying to get it. And I thought it was really interesting reading this because I don't know what it was, but when she was telling the story, I just felt like this like hybrid creature, I guess a cryptid. I just felt like this cryptid was like living its life, you know? Like I felt like it had its own little mystical community that was tucked between the fields of whatever sugarcane. It was sugarcane.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like
that
a
was
Caribbean version of Narnia or something. Like,
yeah, 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 yeah. Like Narnia and like the fauna in Narnia came up, and I just feel like this entity didn't strike me as like, I don't want to say it didn't strike me as malicious because she only had like
mm,
a few seconds encounter. But after doing some research on the Baka, I don't know if it completely fits. Because the Baka feels like something that's conjured like
mm,
intentionally, whereas
yeah.
this being looks like it was just existing. Um, which I feel like is really interesting to me because it's not the first time that I've heard of instances in the Caribbean where people are seeing these like human, half, creature. And you see that with like the mermaids. The mermaids are essentially like per lore, half human, half creature. The Cowfoot woman, half human, half creature.
Hmm.
La Bless, half woman, half creature. La Cia Guapa in the Dominican Republic is also, well, she would be all woman, but she is an entity, but there's just all of these instances where there are these animal human hybrid,
Hmm.
creatures. And it kind of feels like they exist simultaneously with us humans, and we just don't perceive them.
I agree with at least the comment where you were saying about how it doesn't feel malevolent or evil or something. He's just going about his day, coming out of the cane field. And I think also part of that is because when I started looking up other cultures that had similar mythical creatures, the Greek and the Roman mythology came up a lot with the history of faunas and the god Pan. Faunas or faun is half human, half goat mythological creature, and it originally the fauns of Roman mythology were ghosts of rustic places and lesser versions of their chief, the god Faunus. So these late form mythological creatures borrowed their look from the satyrs, which were, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, satires, satyrs. They're half
I think
horse, half
satyr.
men. Yeah, they're half horse, half men, and who in turn borrowed their look from the god Pan. of the Greek pantheon. They were symbols of peace and fertility. And the Romans believed that fawns stirred fear in men traveling in lonely, faraway places, in the wild places. And they were also capable of guiding men in need. They refer to these mythological creatures as like nature spirits, which makes me think he's coming out of the cane field. It just felt like he's some sort of nature spirit as well in Caribbean lands.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, and I have to pull it up, right? But I think it's called the Baku in
Hmm.
Guyana, and it's another nature spirit, and they are protectors of um, the forest. I think it's like Bacoo.
I
Um,
feel like we talked about this before too.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I feel like this is a reoccurring theme, but it's interesting that you went to the um the topic around Pan because I also did research there, but my research was from the perspective of we have a lot of legends in the Caribbean that is governed by like half human, half, you know, goat or half
A lot of
cow.
goat, a lot of goat
Yeah.
stuff
And
and
so I,
hoof creatures. Like,
exactly, exactly. And so I wanted to figure out because I think that when we think of those creatures, we tend to go to the place of like assuming nefarious intentions, right? Because we like think of the hoofs and the hoofs are very much like centered around like demonic
hmm
and Satan, demonic entities and Satan and this and that because that's how Satan is represented in Christianity. And so in my research, I was seeing that they were talking the various articles I was looking at was talking about how the Christian notion of the devil is mirrored off of Pan in Greek mythology. And I thought that was really interesting considering that Pan is, per Greek legend, like seemingly benevolent
hmm
and almost like a caretaker of both man and environment. And so it's really interesting to see um, I guess, the degradation of a figure as time has gone on, as it's been viewed through another lens. So I found that to be of particular interest because even when you look at the Caribbean legends like La Bless and Cowfoot Woman and stuff, like there is a lot of emphasis on the hoof, right? And these entities are known across the Caribbean to be um, malevolent and there has
hmm
to be a connection between our awareness and then the hoof um, and what that means for us, like especially that cloven hoof situation. So then it led me down the rabbit hole of like Baphomet, and on in the tarot, Baphomet is oftentimes put on the devil card. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Baphomet is a half man, half sheep or goat. I think it's a goat, actually, half man, half
hmm
goat.
Yeah.
But the card itself represents balance. And so if you look at the card, Baphomet has like one hand facing upward, one hand facing downward, and it essentially is giving a nod to the notion of as above, so below, as within, so without. Um, and the determination of like, you know, balance. And so I always find it to be very interesting that like Baphomet is the devil card, but also what esoterically Baphomet means. When you consider balance. And for those of you unfamiliar, the devil card, I know that it gets a lot of like wrap around, like demonic nature or whatever. But the devil card in tarot is oftentimes a invitation for change, to release vices that someone may be carrying that is not serving their highest and greatest good, like addiction, to
I was
pornography
just
or
about to say.
gambling. Yeah, or like these inner obsessions that you kind of hold on to that just don't feed the spirit of potential and growth. And so I just found all of that really interesting.
I will definitely second that about the devil card that or Baphomet representation on that card, because when you look at that card, you see him, her, the god, and it's a giant sitting on this black box with two chains attached to these two bare naked humans, a man and a woman. and the chains around their neck. The chain is loose, though. These people have the ability to escape this situation that they're imprisoned in, but they're choosing to stay for some reason. And I like that you put it in a positive spin, because a lot of times when people get these cards, like the Tower even, and the Devil, they look scary. And the Death card, they look
The
scary.
Tower is actually the card that I can't stand the most. Like the Devil card, when the Devil card shows up, like the Devil card for me is like, okay, it's time for me to self audit because
Yeah.
there's something I'm not seeing. One Tower comes up because the Tower card has such a the
It's like
Tower
everything you
card is
built
open
up
ended.
is
Yeah.
coming out.
And it's so open ended because you just don't know to
Yeah.
what degree and to what um, facet is going to come crumbling down. And so oftentimes you're left guessing.
Yeah. The Death card could be scary too, but I always look at it in the spiritual death. Like, what's no longer serving you? What
Yeah.
can die and what can be rebirthed, or what can be birthed anew for you? Whether it's
Yeah.
like an old, like, mental thought pattern or habits, or like we're talking. But I love the tarot. But anyways, yeah, we're getting a little off topic.
I also wanted to say, because I kind of jumped off of the conversation really quickly, but I wanted to say that one of the reasons why Pan specifically was demonized, it wasn't necessarily Pan the entity, but it was almost scapegoated, pun intended, as a reason for people to forsake polytheism. In favor of more monotheistic features in their belief systems. And so, unfortunately, poor Pan became the literal scapegoat. And if you are someone that knows the Bible, even the story of the scapegoat has so much relevance in the conversation. But I also found it to be super sad that poor Pan, who's out here just taking care of the forest and is the guardian of like fertility, is also the poster child for the literal devil incarnate.
Isn't that so, almost, what's the word I'm looking for? It's almost like poetic, because
Yeah,
he represents this forest and nature, and the rise of man, all we have done is kind of destroy the forest and nature and made it this
correct.
enemy.
Yeah,
And earlier when you were saying through the lens of, some so and so that turned Pan into what it is today, demonized, I'm like, through the lens of Christianity,
yeah,
the movement, like, and I think you pointed that out on one of the last episodes we were talking about. You're like, let's be real
yeah,
and say what it is. But
absolutely.
Pan actually reminds me of, and I almost forgot, this Trinidadian folklore story about Papa Bois. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. But he's from Trinidad and Tobago's oral traditions. Um, and he's usually depicting having a man's head, chest, and arms, and goat horns on his head, and the lower body of a goat or similar animal. He's a protector of animals in the forest and can change himself into animal forms to lead hunters away. So again, we're hearing the similar storylines in the Caribbean as well. And he looks a lot like Pan, too. Um, After hearing Alicia's story about the mythological taino creature that she saw, it really had me thinking. I feel like I'm a healthy skeptic, but I'm like, what if this was real? What if everything the Greek talked about was real? These creatures really freaking existed. What
Well,
if they really did?
the conspiracy theorists say, so this is gonna get deep into like conspiracy, but like the oldest mountain range in the world is like, it's like this mountain range that runs from like Switzerland all through Europe. And then when Pangea was in
You're talking about
existence,
Appalachia?
yeah, it leads into
Okay.
Appalachia. And so a lot of the experiences that people have in Appalachia and a lot of the entities that they acknowledge there are also similar to the entities that are acknowledged in like Ireland and Switzerland. And because it's up the same mountain range, it is the oldest mountain range in the
Mm.
world. And, one of the things that comes up for me is I sit and I think to myself, you have this notion of Pan, and then you have a very similar notion, like the fact that the Greek the Greek people were able to identify like, okay, Pan is in charge of like fertility and the forest. And those same, and then here in the Caribbean, right, we've been able to kind of get to the same end goal,
Conclusion,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, it makes you wonder like what is that chord? Because by all means, we don't really have a direct connection to Europe.
Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Roman.
so exactly. And so there's this theory, right? And it's from Dolores Cannon. I absolutely love her. But Dolores Cannon believed, for those of you who don't know, she was like a hypnotist and a past life regressionist, and she channeled a lot. And so one of her theories is that we, when the Earth was seeded by like the aliens, they would drop little nuggets of like information into the atmosphere that specific humans that were sensitive would be able to pick up. And so the notion of like finding fire, when you look back at civilizations, various civilizations found like discovered fire um, very close in proximity to each other, even though they were not physically close in proximity to each other. So like fire started popping up in South America around the same time that it may have been popping up in like Asia, right? And so her theory is that there's these beings that the guardians of the universe will sprinkle in these little tidbits of like wisdom or advancement into our atmosphere when they deem humankind to be ready to receive it. And then we take in that information and then we put it into practice. And that's how people of similar of different locations would come up with such similar ideas
You
without
see
having
that
had
a lot.
conversations.
I mean, you see
Exactly.
that a lot in ancient history, not just with Pan, who we're discussing. That's just like a blink of an eye. We think of like architecture
Yeah.
back in ancient times, and their techniques on building were so similar. Like, how did they receive this knowledge? All have the same knowledge when they didn't have any forms of communication, like long distance communication back then, nor know they even existed. And you can take the example of the inhabitants of Easter Island, which is like the most remote island in the world, I believe. And the kind of structures that they have there, it's just amazing to think like, what else could it be? Like, there's so many mysteries. And I like this theory you're telling me because I've always thought that ideas, they come from somewhere. Where do they come from? And why do we always seem to have the same ideas? I've heard
Yeah.
it in this book I was reading about creative people, that ideas are almost like these like little entities. They float around and they'll pass through your mind whether you want to take it or not, right? You have this idea to write a book about the jungle, the Amazon, a certain idea, whatever it is. Whether you decide to take it on or not is up to you. But eventually it'll go and fly into somebody else's mind and they'll do that idea. And you always hear from people like, man, I was thinking of that too. I should have invented that. I thought of that. Like, I think ideas are literally like these invisible things floating around. We could catch them.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
yeah.
And it's possibly why you and I both came here today to talk about Pan, because there's so
Mm-hmm.
many goated figures in history. So we could have come and talked about any one of the plethora of them. So it's just
Yeah.
super interesting that we came with the same tidbit. But yeah, I found her story to be really interesting and I was really excited to get it. And I tried really, really hard to find. She mentioned that there was a Haitian man who was just like, no, that's not the Baca. And he seemed to have a really great idea of what he thought it was, probably per Haitian lore. But I couldn't find any creature that I think fit the description that we had heard from ladies, which made me a
Mm-mm.
little bit sad. But maybe it's like more of a belief that is kept closer to the culture, you know? Like I think that not every culture is very open about wanting to share some of their, you know, some of these are like close practices.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that not a lot of us respect close practices. So I think that it's actually quite healthy to hold certain belief systems to your chest. And so perhaps me not finding anything online doesn't mean that nothing exists, but that the people that have that information believe themselves to be caretakers of it and are withholding it from the internet.
I also think, in general, the Caribbean is a small community compared to the rest of the world, where they larger population, more information to put out there, more people willing to put information out there. Maybe they're from countries where they have that capability to do that and put it out there. And maybe this is like what you said, or it's just a very like close knit, small oral tradition that hasn't been out there. And I think that's also a big reason why me and Gabby started this podcast, is to kind of give a platform for Caribbean lore and oral traditions to put out there, because some of them are very hard to find, or
Yeah.
you won't hear about it or find it at all, or you hear it from the elders and they die with that information. Um, so, if this is something you are aware of, maybe you're from Haiti yourself and you know a couple things about some lore and you want to step forward and share it with us, feel free to send us an email or text. Or, like Abby said, if this is a closed practice, then we respect that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and we would also love to get Haitian stories, because the Haitian stories on TikTok are always the most intense. Like lore and legends, like they be
Yes.
having some crazy shit happening. So I'm hoping for season 4 we'll actually be able to bring some of that forward, because the culture and the history in Haiti is like so rich, and the energy is alive,
Mhm. I might
literally
have
alive.
one
Oh,
coming
I'm
for
excited.
us. Yeah, it took me a very long time to convince her, because I think what happens is like people, I feel like Caribbean people in general are kind of like, you keep your cards close, like why are you messaging me, like why are you texting me, like. And when she realized, like, I'm really not trying to scam you, it'd be a very elaborate and weird scam, by the way.
Correct.
Hey, I want your ghost stories. Now send me your credit card number. But she was finally like open enough to share.
I would love it so, so, so much. So, speaking of wild stories, Carla, my dear, gave us like such an incredible story out of Cuba. Um, Another reason I'm super excited about this, outside of the fact that we haven't gotten any stories from Cuba, is I feel like, in a large respect, because of the history with Cuba and the Caribbean, as well as the United States that had an embargo on Cuba for so long, I feel like a lot of Cuba lore and culture has largely been hidden away for such a long time.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I guess that goes back to what you were just saying about how sometimes access to sharing isn't there. And so it felt really good to get a story from Cuba. I'm hoping to get a story one day that's going to be from a Cuban that has experienced something on their native lands, because I think that would be really cool. But I'm deeply grateful to Carla for bringing this forward.
Hmm. Me too.
Carla stayed at this very old building, which, has a lot of energy already attached to the building. But I think outside of the building, um, and it's just antiquated nature, the fact that it's next to a home that looked so like, she really described this home as looking very like desolate,
Mm.
while also seeing all of these like religious ornamentations littered around the home, I thought really added to the story, because I think that when you get into her story and you see some of the phenomenon she was experiencing, I think it makes really perfect sense, because she's already in a really old building, and then the home next door seems to have its own like spiritually charged nature.
Yeah, definitely. And her sighting, I mean, it sounds kind of like neat and clean, right? She saw something and then she found out from the security guard and the lady that's on the land, like, oh yeah, this girl used to live in there, that from Argentina, represent. She died in there sadly. And do you think it was her? I think it might have been. It sounds, she goes over this encounter, I really think of kind of like a typical gothic ghostly story, of like a woman in white kind of deal with like the wind billowing her dress and she floats down the hall. Like, that's sort of the imagery by the way she described it to me.
Yeah, to me, it's a little bit of an enigma for me because, you know, when we think about last week's episode with Michael and the vet's house or whatever, you know, like, I didn't get the impression that the entities that were existing in the home were like people. I think sometimes we think that because someone dies in a particular place, right? There's a particular energetic residue that's. And what I'm finding in doing a lot of research is that people could be connected to a space for a lot of reasons. So homeowners that like own their home for a long period of time and for whatever reason they had to sell. Um, and they didn't necessarily die in the home or they didn't necessarily get sick in the home and then die. They choose to come back to that space energetically after their human form has like obviously passed away, because they feel a kinship and connection to the home. And so I think that it's really clean and clear cut when it's just like, oh yeah, well, you know, somebody died here without having more of a backstory. So even when you look at like season 1, episode 4, Nicole's story, it's called Home Invasion. She's dealing with a haunting in which the person that owned the home and loved the home and raised her children and died in the home and continue to harbor energy in the home. Like, I think that's a really clear-cut, classic haunting situation. This particular situation, I feel like there are a lot of opportunities to explore and a lot of potentials here because I don't know that someone dying in a particular place is enough for them to still be there. I think it depends on the circumstances. Like, was she killed? Did she have cancer and she knew that her time was limited? You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the circumstances are really important, which we obviously don't.
And can we talk about the remedies that the woman told her to do? I mean, to put like a cup of water upside down on her bedside.
Classic
And I had to
Caribbean.
clarify. Yeah. And all the girls that are like, who's this weird chick? Like, what is she doing? And I had to clarify. I was like, wait, so how did you do this? A full cup of water? She had to do like put her shoes facing away from the door. Was that right? Because like, or away from the bed, because it's like inviting them in or something like that. And then the glass upside down filled with water. And in my head, I'm like, wow, that would be so messy. Like just trying to figure that out. She's like, I put a cardboard over it. I'm like, yeah, but still.
No, I'm
Cardboard
so
doesn't really
klutzy.
seal water. Like it would be.
Yeah, I'm so klutzy. I don't mess it up. Water would
Same.
have been all over the place and the ghost would still be back the next night because I would have
Yes.
done it wrong. For sure. For
Yes.
sure. But I love all of the little tips and tricks because I feel like, again, it's like super Caribbean. You know, like you tell
The
somebody your house
salt.
haunted. Exactly. You tell someone your house is haunted and they're going to give you a list of things that you can do. And matter of fact, I'm going to try it. I'm going to literally make a Facebook status and I'm going to ask my peers. I'm going to tell them that something's going on in my home and I want to know,
What are the
you
best
know,
remedies?
yeah. And let's see what we come up with.
That's a good idea. That's actually a good idea for like a post to do, like top
Yeah.
5 Caribbean remedies to ward off evil spirits or something.
Yeah. I'll get you guys the information. I'll post it on Patreon.
So I actually found ANAP, their website, because I was looking it up, and this is just an AI overview. So hopefully it's legit. But they did link back to every website that they get their information from. But the National Association of Small Farmers, ANAP, is a peasant collective in Cuba that provides services and support to small farmers. The ANAP is inspired by the Mesoamerican farmer-to-farmer method, and it has organized an agroecological movement to share knowledge and innovation. The movement has been successful with over 100,000 families joining since 1997. They help with training and assistance and technical and economic assistance to its members. The ANAP participates in the development of policies and strategies for agriculture and production. It negotiates with the Cuban government on prices, credits, and other interests for farmers, and cooperates with NGOs, mainly from Europe and Canada. It's funded by a voluntary self-tax on farm sales by member cooperatives. So that's like super interesting to me because she described it. She's like, yeah, we went there and we like learned to farm and stuff like that. And it just kind of had me curious because I was like, what kind of place is this? And when I looked it up, I was like, that's amazing for a community to have that in general.
I love it. And it makes so much sense with Cuba because it's just like they have like the largest um, contingent per capita of doctors. Like
Wow.
Cuba doesn't get half as much praise as I think that they deserve, especially considering the circumstances
Hmm.
that have forced them to largely be super like independent. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that may have been something that helped to move that movement forward is the fact that like nobody coming to save you. So the United States and the embargo, I think really, um, it really created an environment where they kind of had to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so I think that this movement sounds a lot like one of the remedies to that. But I'm super happy that we got these stories. They were cute. They weren't super intense, which is a nice change of pace because I feel like this season has already been one that has been quite the bringer of intensity. But next episode won't be intense either. Next episode is actually a really sweet story that is told by yours truly. So I think you guys will like it. But then after that, everything else is going to be scary. So brace out you back.
It's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, go check out our Patreon. Sign up for Patreon. It's extremely affordable and it supports the show. We're going to have Carla's second story there where she talks about her grandfather potentially staying by her side to tutor her on her homework.
Yeah. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. This has been another fabulous episode. Don't forget to share this with a friend of a friend. Please reach out to us. Tell us what you think. Tell us where you're located. And let us know if you have a story that you'd like to share with us.
All right. Take care. See you next Thursday.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Caribbean Mystics Podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share with your family and friends. Like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all of our spooky Caribbean content.
Do you have a story you'd like to share that took place in the Caribbean? Email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. That's caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. Or check the show notes for more info.
Caribbean Mystics is created and hosted by Paulina Creaky and Gabrielle Carrard. Theme song is Folktale Jouvert Riddim by Marcano.